Shudder acquired it?
What a great question. No. So previous to it being acquired by Shudder, I just wrote it because I had just come out of a writer's room and I was writing things for other people constantly. And I was like, I'm so frustrated with not working on my own stuff.
Yeah.
What can I do about it? Like instead of complaining, how can I put that effort into actually making something happen? And I was like, oh, I'm going to write I'm going to write the most demented thing that I can think of. And I wrote that.
Well, well done, because it is demented, it's ingenious, it's tedious, it also is thought-provoking. Some of the characters you've written in this, I don't know if they developed through the production, but there's a lot of layers to Millicent, Johnny, Rebecca in particular. I gravitated towards so weird. How did in the world did you come up with all these characters?
Oh, so I have two master's degrees. One's in creative writing and one is as an investigative journalist. And my
Oh,
thesis to be an investigative journalist, and this is a spoiler. So if you don't want to be spoiled onto the twists and turns of the movie, skip ahead by like a minute. My thesis for my investigative journalist work was I studied female serial killers. So I wrote this like 100-page, deeply researched thing about American serial female killers who were solo killers, not part of a team.
yeah.
And so all of the psychology that I read about for my thesis, I applied to the characters in the script.
Was that a fascination for when you were young? Is it something you were always enjoyed, looking up people who were serial
Enjoy.
killers? I mean, I went surfing, I watched movies, I became a journalist because I loved history and writing and English. But
Yeah.
you, I mean, did you watch a lot of serial killer movies, or how did the fascination begin?
Oh, I think it's more about I was so interested in women being violent, but being told by society that women aren't violent. And
Yeah,
then I was also very interested in because female serial killers have a higher kill count than male serial killers because they get away, they have longer kill careers than male serial killers. Like, for instance, because they're Black widows and they continue to kill the men that they marry for 20 years, they'll have
yeah,
like
right.
50 people that they've killed. Or if you have um someone in a nursing home, they're constantly killing and then they're moving to the next hospital and they're constantly killing. And I was so deeply concerned about that because it's so antithetical to how women are supposed to be biologically because their neuroplasticity moves around so that we have empathy and these women do not have it. And so originally I wrote this thesis to present to the FBI so we could have a better profiling system to catch the female serial killers sooner.
Wow, okay. Did they get their hands on it? Did they give you any
I
feedback?
taught I, ta- I talked to a couple of people because I was also taking a criminology class at the same time, and it was taught by this former CIA guy, but it
Yeah.
never really saw the light of day. And also, they probably don't need my help. Like they might be doing an okay job without me.
It seems like there's so many documentaries around that are true crime, and a lot of these cold cases are getting brought up. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's a thing. It's a huge thing. I mean, and your movie sort of combines that element as well as some shocking elements, like we're doing spoilers, so it's okay. But
Good.
the trees out the back, and where the bodies go, and that concept I loved because even at the end, Rebecca said that need to buy the next block, so they weren't finished.
No, no, she's such a good mother, Rebecca. She's such a good mother. But I want to tell you, and this is also kind of a spoiler. This is
Sure.
all just watch the movie before you watch the podcast.
I
Um,
will. I will actually do a little introduction that listeners and viewers would have heard or seen before we
oh,
talk.
good.
Yeah.
That's clever. So when I came up with this concept, we used to play this game where you would take very different films and kind of smush them together and create a storyline based on those
Yeah.
two films, Jaws and It's a Wonderful Life. Like, what would that movie look like? And so I took what if Lolita were Halloween Mike Myers' babysitter when he was a little kid? So you have this very sexualized younger woman and this kid who we don't know what's wrong with him, but it's like if you're listening to Dr. Loomis, something like just evil. He's just evil.
Yeah.
And what do you do with that in a family dynamic? Like, who is the mother of that kid?
Yeah.
And what did she go through to be that mother?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you don't have a Dr. Loomis, but you have a Dr. Welsh.
I do. Oh, good. Yes. So it's
Yeah.
my mother's maiden name. My mother will
Right.
never, my mother is just she's very Christian
Yeah.
and we'll have these conversations where she's like, "Can I watch this movie?" And I'm like, No." And I'll tell her that I'm working on this script. She goes, "Is this finally one I can watch?" I'm like, "No, you can't watch this one either because you'll hate it."
Oh,
So unfortunately, she'll never watch it, but her name is there.
yeah. Well, obviously she's such a supporter of your work. You'll have to do something one day that she can watch, maybe.
I know it'll it'll have to be like Hallmark, Christmas,
Yeah, well, yeah.
Santa
I mean,
Claus falls in love again. I don't know.
well, for a little while there, when A Spoonful of Sugar started, I thought it might have been a Christmas movie because it was around that holiday period.
Yeah, yeah. I think
Yeah.
people should watch it with their mothers on Mother's Day.
It's funny how you like combining different movie genres or movies and just putting them together and making that up as a game. Because when it started, there's a movie called The Last Supper where a group put dead bodies in their backyard and they grow tomatoes. So
Mhm.
when you started doing it in this movie, I'm like, oh, that's reminded me of that movie, The Last Supper. Have you ever heard of that one?
No, I haven't. Tell me everything you know about it.
Well, in a nutshell, it's about a whole lot of college students, including Bill Paxton is in the cast, Jason Alexander, Cameron Diaz, and more. And if they invite people to dinner, this group invites people to dinner, and if they don't like them or they do something racist or whatever it might be, they'll poison them and then put them out in their backyard and grow another tomato tree. They have plots.
That's
That's all I'll
amazing.
say. And it's a great film called The Last Supper. Uh,
Wow.
yeah. What sort of backstory did you have for Millicent? And is she really 21? That is something that I wasn't exactly sure of. And if you don't want to say it because you want it to be a mystery, unless I missed it, I don't think her actual age was ever told. But she
No.
did at one point say, I'm 21.
Yeah, it never is told. And if you're prefacing this whole episode by you should watch the movie first, then I'll
Yeah.
take freedom here. She lies about everything.
Mm,
Backstory that I had for her is she is a teenager. She is a serial killer. She goes from home to home to home, like kind of in the foster care system.
mm,
That um she picks men specifically that she either wants to fix or heal or control. And when she isn't satisfied with that dynamic anymore, she kills them. So with
okay.
Roger, she infiltrated that home, lied to him, and said that she's going to high school every day, and then got him to kill his wife for her. And then when she got tired of him, kills him.
Mm,
And then the theory is, or how I wrote it, is when she infiltrates into Rebecca's home, she's going to do the same thing. So Rebecca's husband, Jacob's going to kill Rebecca, and then once Millicent's tired of him, she'll kill him. But what's different about
yeah.
this home? There's a kid.
I love this deep dive because it got my brain just ticking over and taking notes while I was watching it.
Oh,
And even the second time, I wasn't able to answer those questions. So thank you.
you watched it twice?
I did. I watched it when it came out because obviously
Oh, yay.
it's been on Shudder for a while. But before our
Yeah.
conversation, I wanted to refresh myself with it.
Oh,
The,
thanks.
the title Spoonful of Sugar, was it always called that? Did you name it that, or did you write it under another name when you were first doing it?
Yeah, because my background's as a journalist, I always expect my names to change because every title of everything I've ever written, the
Yeah,
head always changed. And it's like you have to laissez-faire about all of that stuff because the editor's in charge. So when when I write things, I tend to do what Benjamin Percy does, which is I give it kind of a lame name. So my lame name for this script was called The Sitter because it's accurate. It's exactly what the movie's about. But they wanted to change it to acid sweet because the algorithms for streaming is if something is A, B, or C with the first letter of the title, people are more likely to have it pop up into their platform.
Is
And so
that
they,
right?
yeah, so they were going to name it Acid Sweet, and then they changed it because it is kind of a demented Mary Poppins. I'm not responsible for that name. I give it up to my creative team, Katrina and Mercedes, who and Vanishing Angle, who produced and Mercedes directed. They came
Yeah.
up with that title, Spoon, and it's so clever. It's so like apropos.
Yeah, I saw Acid Sweet in the credits. It's still in the end credits.
Yeah.
So I assumed that might have been the original title. Did Mercedes and you work together on it, or did Mercedes come into the project afterwards? Like, what was the process there?
Oh yeah. Um, so I had already written the script and I met with Mercedes to direct it. And at some point in time, we had the same manager.
Yeah.
She brought it to Katrina to produce, and then the two of them brought it to Vanishing Angle to help with the producing arm of it. And then Mercedes, like this was such an easy project for me, and I wish every project was this easy for me.
Yeah.
I didn't have to do anything but have written it because Mercedes took it to Shudder. She pitched it, they loved it. It was the first thing I'm told that they funded. And
Okay.
then um they were on set and would give me notes every day. I was on a different production. So every night I would come home from work and I would be like writing their notes for the next day's slides. And it was what's great about that collaboration is I have such continued faith and
Mm,
a lack of doubt in their creative sensibilities that
mm.
any note they gave, I was like, yeah, that's a really smart note. I don't have any arguments against it. And I know some people are of the school of thought where you write something, even if you agree with all of the notes, you can't give them everything because then they'll take more control over it. I
Yeah.
disagree with that. If you trust your creative team, trust your creative team.
And you with a journalist background like myself, you can take feedback or you can adapt as well. So it works perfectly for a screenplay.
Yeah, I mean, us as journalists, very not a lot of control. And you pick one battle and you better, we're not, are we swearing? You better F and win that battle.
You can swear if you really need to. I understand
Oh,
your
man.
point.
The children, the 14-year-olds who are watching my movie need to not hear me swear.
Yeah, maybe not. Thank you. I don't
Yeah.
mind that. A few beeps here and there, that's not going to matter.
Yeah.
I'm kind of, there's like a classic movie called The Nanny, which has got excuse me, Bette Davis in it. Alicia Silverstone, she made a movie called The Babysitter. That
Yep.
was pretty iconic in the 90s. And
Yep.
then, I mean, there was a more recent Netflix movie, the couple of them, Babysitter, Babysitter
Mhm.
2. So it's a
Yep.
common thing.
Yeah.
It's a common thing. And I'm glad you didn't call it The Sitter because that reminds me of the comedy with Jonah Hill. Uh,
Yep.
yeah, so very, very interesting that the algorithms are like a phone book, the old school phone book, where the first letter of the alphabet is something that you look up first. I mean, that's
Yep.
what old school.
Wild.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And the Extreme Nanny Diaries, when she went for the job as the nanny, I was Millicent. I was thinking this is like Extreme Nanny Diaries. She was getting the third degree about what she couldn't do, and the
Mhm.
meds. Yeah, it reminded me
Mhm.
of that
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
with Scarlett Johansson. Did you come up with the cast and help cast because Kat Foster is amazing, and Morgan. Like it's a little ensemble there that very few people might know the actors, but they've really delivered.
I know. Yeah, I know.
Did you
Um,
did you help with casting at all, or not really?
nope. Nope. No,
Okay.
Mercedes had her list and they approached those actors and actresses and they just
Yeah.
came on. You really have to, I think with a story like this, when you present it to talent to read, you're definitely like drawing a clear line in the ground on this is this project because the very intense fantasy sex scene that happens,
Yeah.
that was that was shoot day one.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I think the talent really has to trust Mercedes that
Mm.
this is the type of story that she's telling from this viewpoint for this reason. So there was a lot of talk between Mercedes and talent about motivation for the characters.
Yeah, that's not uncommon these days, I would say, on projects where
Yeah.
intimate scenes, sex scenes, whatever it might be, even domestic violence, whatever it might concern, are often done on the first day or the first couple of days of shooting. Uh, yeah, and trust with your director and everyone involved obviously is huge, but
Yeah.
having not really seen a lot of these actors, Morgan Saylor in particular,
Mhm.
she nailed your character. She was so good. Couldn't take. She was so incisive,
So good.
and pardon the pun, but she's very incisive into your psyche when you're watching it.
Yeah, and I think she gives these very subtle facial expressions that if you blink, you'll miss it. But she's
Mm.
so in character.
Was there any scenes in the movie that you've written that just came onto the screen exactly how you wrote it, or was the whole movie satisfying for you, or can you pinpoint any particular moment?
I love the whole thing. I've seen it a couple times and I saw edits of it,
Yeah.
and I don't have any notes for Mercedes. Like as a director, or like you're sitting there as a writer, they should have done it this way. Why didn't they do it this way? I don't have those complaints. I think
Okay.
she did such a bang up job. But I think you're also kind of asking what was special
Yeah.
or different. And there is an Easter egg. So I'm in two of the scenes in the backgrounds.
I was
I,
looking for you on the
yeah,
bus.
yeah, I wasn't on the bus. I'm when the car suddenly stops as it almost hits Millicent and Johnny. I'm
Yeah.
one of the pedestrians on the side walking.
Right.
And then the carolers are walking up to the house. I'm one of the carolers. I have
I I need to watch it again now. You're gonna make me watch it a third time.
yeah, I have a beige and white houndstooth kind of winter coat that's cinched at the waist. You might miss me, but if you know what to look for, you'll see me.
All right.
And that was Mercedes' idea.
Well, I'm glad. I'm glad you had a cameo. That's
Yeah,
terrific.
really neat.
Were you on set on a regular basis, or not really? As a writer, did you sort of stay away from the set?
No, because I was working on another set. I
Yeah.
couldn't be on that set except for the one day that I was an extra.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I noticed in the credits, and I was looking for you on the bus, but there was a actress or an actor called Brianna Oppenheimer on the bus in the credits, and I thought that was interesting. Just
Oh,
her
neat.
name caught my
Oh, I
attention.
love that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Um,
do I. Yeah,
I will tell you something funny is the house that they filmed the Caroler scene at.
yeah.
I had worked at that house before on a different movie, like 2 years before that, and I was an associate producer on that movie. And it was about a dog who poops money. It's like a children's movie. I was like, it is so interesting. I wonder when I'm going to come back to this house and what project I'm going to be on then, because it was in a children's movie. It's in a
Yep,
sexual thriller movie. Who knows
yep.
what movie to be in next? It's like people keep filming at the kind of same locations in LA. It's very interesting to me.
Well, have you got anything in mind where you can continue this story? Because you've left it open. Uh, they want to maybe buy the block behind. You don't know who the neighbors are. Maybe there's some neighbors that are just as dark as those
Yeah.
two.
Oh, that's interesting. No, my idea for a sequel, because I see so many horror movies that do sequels and they do sequels poorly.
Yeah.
I think the best sequels are prequels. And so if I had a chance to do this story and revisit these characters, I would do a prequel of Millicent.
Thank you. That's on my list to ask you about. Like we talked about backstory, but
Yeah.
a prequel is something you'd consider? Yeah,
Oh, 100%. It would just be fascinating to me to like visit a
yeah,
10-year-old killer, like who is socially cognizant of how fucked up the system that she's in is.
yeah,
And maybe she starts out as kind of a vigilante because right now in this story, she is our protagonist or antagonist, and you
yeah,
don't know what she is until maybe the end.
yeah.
So in the prequel, I would flip it and do the other one for her character.
And she has a different name or set of names, right?
She has so many different names. She lies about everything.
Yeah, yeah. No, you got me intrigued. Very intrigued.
Yeah.
Do you have a routine when you write? Do you sit yourself alone in a room, or do you go to a cafe? Is there any particular style of moment that you want to be in when you're writing?
Yeah. Oh, I'm such a particular writer. I know that people can go to coffee shops and just like
Yeah,
put earphones on and get rid of the din that's around them, but I cannot. I can't do it. I have to have silence
mm,
or very little sound.
mm.
And And often I don't get that in my home environment. Like my cat will interrupt me. I'm like, oh, Edith, pee off, please go away. I love you, but please. So usually my writing routine, and I know this is odd, but what writer isn't odd, is I'll drive to Griffith Park and I'll sit in the back of my car with the windows down and the fresh like pine scent coming in.
Okay,
I'll be across the street from the golf course because golfers also like it quiet. So nobody around the golf course can have loud music. So it's quiet. And
sure.
I'll write there.
That's an interesting spot. So the back seat of your car. You must have a
I
really
know.
nice car.
I have a CRV, so it's roomy, but
Yeah,
the area doesn't have internet. So I'm
yeah.
not like constantly getting
Mm,
distracted with text messages, phone calls, or shopping online.
mm.
It's quiet, it smells good. I can walk up the trail and use the bathroom, and it's like it forces me to be in a spot. And that's what I like.
I love it because I'm blessed that I live right near the Pacific Ocean, just not far from my house here, and
Yeah.
I'll read a lot. So I find a nice spot on a lookout or near the ocean or on a rock. A bit like how you're right. You just want that silence and natural sounds.
Yeah. I heard so I went to Mark Twain's house.
Oh, that would have been exciting.
It was so cool.
Yeah,
And a tour of the house, and we went to his writer's room. And this was the house that his wife's father bought for them, the one that looks like a steamboat kind of.
yeah.
And the tour guide said Mark Twain had to have his desk in front of a wall because if his desk were in front of window, he would get distracted by the simplest of things because everything to him was a story. So
Hmm.
even if he saw like a bird outside, he would create a story about it. But if he would either stare at a wall or lie on his back on the floor and stare at the ceiling because there's literally no distractions on the ceiling.
Interesting. I hadn't heard that before.
Yeah.
Mm, okay.
Yeah.
If a natural progression sometimes for writers is into maybe producing or directing.
Mhm.
Is that something that's on your mind potentially?
Oh, what a good question. Yes. Yeah, so I'm directing something that I wrote in Italy called Teatro dell'Amore. And
Wow.
we have Italian cast attached, and we have an American actress attached so far. And we're hoping to film in October. Our funds are almost fully raised. It's a low budget, but that's kind of exciting.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then I have another project that I wrote and I'm directing in Scotland, and hopefully that's in January, February, or March. And I'm like, and the first one's a magical realism.
Yeah.
And do you like you're a film buff, like you know movies, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Very much.
And
I'm engulfed in film. I watch movies every
yeah,
day. I grew up, watching movies when I took notes as a kid, and that's how I got to where I am right now. I just totally absorbed everything.
I love that so much. So my background is I have done so many jobs, but I also worked for many years as a film projectionist. And in fact, to write this script, I got a job at Tarantino's movie theater in Los Feliz. So I'm still a film projectionist, but for research purposes.
The
And
New Beverly, you mean?
not that, well, I will start working at the New Beverly, but right now I work at the Vista. But
Ah, the Vista,
they're owned,
yes.
yeah, they're both owned by him now that we're going to interchange projectionists.
Yep.
But my story is based loosely on my life, where I spent a summer of my life working on Block Island and living on Block Island, which is off of Rhode Island. And I lived inside of the movie theater, and I was the movie theater manager, and I was the movie theater projectionist. And
Yep.
it was so romantic, but I was also going through like a very heavy heartbreak at the time. And so my
Oh,
story takes place in Italy, and it follows this woman who is a movie theater manager and projectionist. She's half Italian, half American. She inherited a movie theater from her father, and she's going through the worst heartbreak of her life. But while she's going through this heartbreak, she's getting life and dating advice from her imaginary friend.
oh,
Yeah, Italian film icon Marcello Mastroianni, who is
oh,
also in love
yeah.
with her. And so the rule of my world is any projector that projected whatever movie they projected first, those characters came to life and attached themselves as imaginary friends to different audience members. And so my story has like Paul Newman and Charlie Chaplin and Katharine Hepburn and Sidney Poitier and Monica Vitti and a couple of other characters that they can interact with each other. Like Marcello has this great monologue scene with Monica Vitti,
Yeah.
but the other characters that are real life characters can only see their imaginary friends. And so
Okay.
it follows these two characters, and Marcello is so in love with her, and I did it on purpose because he's such a all of the interviews that all of the Hollywood actresses had when they were asked about Marcello and working with him, they all said that they felt so safe with him. I
Yep.
thought that's a very interesting thing because he's a funny man. People don't know this. He's very funny. He's very charming. Um, but I think when you're going through a heartbreak like that, you need safety. And so that's why I chose Marcello. And so we're almost fully funded. We're just looking for the last little bit of that. It should be easy because it's a love letter to cinema, and it has all of these like great roles, these great meaty roles. And who wouldn't want to see Paul Newman on screen again?
Well, you've got me buying a ticket immediately, and the fact that you can bring to life some of yesteryear's iconic directors and actors and
Um,
screen legends like that in your incorporated into your story. I mean, yeah, I'm there. I can't wait.
Yay. Yeah, and the title will change because it's not the best title. So whatever it's named, I'll let you
Uh,
know. And then the one in Scotland is
yeah.
well, you love horror, so I don't need to preface this at all, but it's an elevated horror. And I remember watching the Brett Kavanaugh hearings
Mm,
and thinking about what a witch trial this is, right? Like
mm,
still to this day, we're not believing women.
mm.
And then the day after Trump was elected, I remember getting on a city bus, and that day, violence against women had risen like 30% in the United States overnight. And
Yeah, I know.
I looked on the city bus, and this trial is happening, and I'm like, who's on my side?
Mm,
Who do I need to look at to be aware of that they're going to attack me? And who's
mm.
going to help me? And so I wrote this story about these two sisters and their midwives, and they perform abortions in the Scottish Highlands. And it's both the height of the bubonic plague and it's the height of the Scottish witch trials.
Oh,
And they're hunted by a local witch hunter.
okay. So you've tapped into a lot of folklore and history there, and you're in Scotland on location. That is going to be an amazing shoot and a good movie.
It's going to be epic, and I
Yeah.
can't wait to direct it. I'm so excited. It's called Sister's Bell because one of the sisters wears a bell around her neck
Oh,
because the other sister is blind. And so she follows the sound.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to have your hands full, and but that's such a creative, ingenious two
Thank
movies. totally different in their own way, but
Totally different.
uh,
Yeah.
we have a connection, and you don't know this yet, but my second job was at a cinema as a projectionist, threading the 35 mil
Yeah.
prints and splicing them together, putting them on, and then putting them back in the container and
Yep.
sending them off again.
Yeah. Did you do reel to reel?
Yes, yeah, we had two
Same.
projectors, and I was a
Yep.
kid, so I used to go in there and at the cinema, obviously being a movie lover. I mean, this interview is not about me, but I used to get posters and collect things. And then eventually, when I got old enough, the projectionist said, "Do you want to learn how to do this?" And I ended up learning, and I did it for a few years, maybe close to 10 years when I was young.
Amazing.
And I started getting published as a journalist and ended up moving on. But a video
Yeah.
shop, the video shop locally, I worked at as well. So I've been around movies my entire life.
Same. My dad owned two different movie rental houses growing up. And so
Yeah,
same. Yeah. Oh, I love this. We're so connected.
we are. What would you do you think, in off field question here, but what would you be doing if you weren't a writer or in the filmmaking business? Is there another
Oh.
career that you
Mm.
like or you think you could do?
Yeah, I think so. I worked at the Innocence Institute as an investigative journalist, and the
Of
Innocence
course, yeah.
helps exonerate wrongfully convicted individuals. It's a nonprofit. It was part of an arm of Point Park University, and it was journalism based. That one in Pittsburgh and the one in Chicago are the only two that were journalism based. The rest of the Innocence projects are lawyer based
Mm,
because of funding, because it's a nonprofit. It went under the year that I graduated. If it hadn't gone under, I would still be working there because I every day I woke up with a sense of purpose. And I think it's
right.
a very rare thing to find a connection point between a person and what they're doing in their career. Like it's purpose filled. And I had to be so spot on because if I made a single mistake, that's someone's life.
Mm.
And I really hate injustice. Like that's such a stupid sentence. Like I should reframe it. Like,
It makes sense. I know what you're saying.
yeah,
Yeah,
I'm more
it's
passionate
coming
about
from
it.
the heart.
Yeah, it's horrible the way that like just because you're of this social economic background, just because you couldn't afford a lawyer, just because you were like somebody, the DA paid somebody else to rat on you so that that person can get a lesser sentence, so the DA has a stronger record.
Mm,
Like it's egregious misuse of justice, and I
mm.
hate. And if that hadn't gone down, if we hadn't lost money, I would probably still be working for them.
Well, you can always fall back on similar things that you might know and love from that period of your life. But I
Yeah.
honestly think your movie film career is going to go a long way, especially
Oh,
after the next two films.
hopefully, yeah, hopefully. I'll take those blessings. Thank you.
I won't keep you too much longer, but before we wrap, being a female in the industry, has that ever created any hurdles for you? I mean, we're both about the same vintage, I would assume, and
Yeah.
we've seen changes, and I've spoken to many actors and directors and people in the industry who have seen the change and things have happened to them, but they know it's never going to
Mhm.
end though in some respect. Have you ever had any hurdles, or has your career so far been, fairly straightforward and no drama?
I think anytime you ask that question to a woman, someone of the LGBTQ plus community, or a BIPOC person, they're going to say yes. Even now, they're going to say yes. My hurdles have been, I remember pitching in a room what was a feature film that I directed. It was one of my first ones, and I pitched it in the room, and the funding was like it was guaranteed funding.
Yep.
Um, they were going to give me this and that and the other thing, and I pitched in the room, and they didn't give it to me. I was like, what happened? Like it was such a low budget. I think it was maybe $50,000 they were going to give me to film this whole thing, right? It was such a
Yeah.
low budget. I was like, well, what happened? And my two producers that were on the project, they didn't really tell me what happened. That same company The very next project they did is they funded a man's project for $350,000. He hadn't done anything before. And I was on
Yeah.
that set and he didn't even direct the movie. All he did, I saw it. This isn't hyperbole or anything. All he did was
Yeah.
complain about not being able to direct, and he would F off to Video Village and like sit back and smoke, right? The AD did most of the work for that film. And so I was like, oh, I get it. It's because I was a woman. Like
Yeah.
they didn't give you money, you hadn't done enough. Like, I field produced a bunch of Ford Grant documentaries and I worked at National Geographic. That's not enough for you. Okay, you'll give all the money to the man that has no experience. And that's one example. And I could rant and rave, but nobody, yeah, everybody has those stories. Of those communities, everybody has those stories.
Do you feel it's changing, or it has changed in your eyes, or not
I
really?
think no, I think it is changing. I don't think it's changing enough. I don't think it's
Mm,
changing fast enough. But what it takes still is for a white man of authority in a position of power to open doors for those people.
mm.
That's really what it takes. We need advocates. So you like, I don't remember if we recorded this or not. So you offering to open the door to Australia for me is you being an advocate for me because I wouldn't be able to open that door. It takes you helping me, and I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And it's something I've done for many, and I've turned into almost not an agent, but an advisor. And my experience in the industry, if I can help anyone, in particular, females,
Yeah,
males, LGBTQ, whatever it might be, I don't have any preferences, but I'm there for everyone. And it's such a hard industry, but I am an advocate for indie film in particular, local and international. So that's a big step to get made these days. And COVID sort of changed a lot of things as well, as I'm assuming you went
yeah.
through various changes. So I'm here and I love
I know
sharing
you are.
knowledge.
I know you are. I saw your social media thread is why I wanted to connect with you because you seem like such a kind and genuine person.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Leah.
Yeah.
To wrap it up, you have a podcast. What can you tell us all about
I have the best podcast for your audience
it?
because it's about filmmaking, but it's kind of very specific. My co-host Angel and I both went through one of the Sundance collabs, and part of the program for that was they were teaching you how to pitch. And he and I
Yeah,
were like, well, there's no re repository for these. So you can't go anywhere and ask somebody, what's the exact formula for pitching? How are we supposed to do it? Like
yeah.
there's a form for script structure. If you want to do a 3-act or a 5-act, you know how to do it. But for pitching, there isn't. And so we decided to make a podcast where it's 2 parts, where writers come on and they pitch their stories. They present themselves, why they wrote the story, which is always important, what the
Yep.
story is, and then we have actors perform the first 3 pages of that story. And it's a tool for the writer to use to send out to agents or managers or producers to see if they can get somebody hooked into their story instead of sending a script because we're such a visual medium, right? Or we're driving everywhere in LA, and LA
Sure.
is a hub for filmmaking. Like if you're driving from point A to point B and it's 15 minutes, you have time to listen to 3 pitches. You can work while you're driving. And then
That's
the other,
really good.
it's really good, right? So it's called
Yeah.
Pitch exclamation point podcast. And then the other part, so that's the paid part. The other part is a free part where we interview industry professionals. We've interviewed Franklin Leonard, who's done the Blacklist. We've interviewed Liz Hanna, who wrote The Post.
Yeah.
Um, Interviewed a lot of other producers and movers and shakers in Hollywood. And it's just a way to, it's kind of selfish actually, because Angel and I have
You're
learned
allowed to be selfish.
we've learned so much. I'm sure that you experience this too, having all of your social stuff. We learn so much because we get to ask the questions we're curious about, and
Yeah.
then hopefully that aligns with the questions that our audience is curious about as well. But it's so fascinating, and I think One of our more popular ones is with John Zalzerny, and he's a literary manager, and we've had him on for both seasons. He's very special. He's the only one that we've asked back.
Yeah.
Um, and his insight into the industry and like how to approach a manager, it's so insightful and it's so informative, and a lot of people just don't know. Like, even as a writer, producer, director, I get inundated with people asking me, can you help me make my film? Can you help me fund it? Can you help me do this, that, and the other? I'm like, no, I
No.
can't, because you didn't ask me the right way, or I don't know you, or there's no connection, or you just sent me a bunch of attachments, or you didn't proofread, or like whatever small little thing. Also, I don't have the time.
Yeah.
But if you present, if you pitch in the right way in an email, maybe you get through. And so I think John's episode is good about that, and the whole podcast as well.
Pitching is so important. All the actors, directors, writers, everyone I've spoken to over many years, it comes down a lot to how to pitch, how to promote yourself, and how to present yourself. It's so good that you're doing this podcast. It'll be insightful for just anyone tuning in who might even be thinking about doing something. It's going to
Yeah.
give steer them in the right direction, obviously.
Yeah, and we're in season 2 of it, and it's been so educational, and I hope that anyone who listens to it learns something and it helps them with their career. That's really why Angel and I did it.
How do you know Angel? Old friends?
Yeah, so I met Angel many years ago, and I have been casting him in things ever since, and he's my creative partner. Yeah, so I cast him in things. He edits things of mine. He is directing a script that I wrote. We're just, you find those
Great.
people in life that you align with, and he and
Yeah.
I align. Yeah.
All right. Well, finally, the final word with your movie Spoonful of Sugar, the one we're sort of focused on. Although I really have enjoyed getting to know you a lot better today and hearing about your stories and thoughts
Yeah.
and beliefs. But anyone who's got Shudder, because it's a Shudder exclusive, why should they watch Spoonful of Sugar? Other than the obvious, because I mean, I liked it. I've seen it twice. I want to watch it a third time to try and spot you.
Yay. Yeah.
And Morgan isn't just a sensation in my
Um,
eyes. They all are, but she is great in this role that you are constantly shaking your head at. So
yeah.
why should people watch your movie?
Well, first, I want to also say that it's on AMC because Shudder's owned by AMC. So if you don't have Shudder, because I know some countries don't, you
Yeah,
can rent it on, or you can rent it through AMC.
that's
But
true. Yeah, sorry, we do have both AMC and Shudder in Australia. You're right.
lucky you. People should watch this movie because it's such a deep, fascinating look into people's psychology in things that would normally be considered taboo. So if you want to study, or if you're fascinated with crime, if you are fascinated by serial killers, if you want to see something that's a little bit refreshing, I think that I wrote that.
No animals were hurt in the making of the film.
No, it's fake.
That's
It's
make
a fake rabbit. Don't eat
yeah.
cupcakes while you watch the movie. There's some vomiting.
And yeah, be careful of apples as well.
Yes. Watch out for the apples.